So I saw a great video from 3 years ago, roughly 4 years ago now almost, by David V. Stewart about his declining interest in video games, and I thought this topic was close enough to my own heart, and the points he was making were, close enough to my own experience that I felt the need to talk about this topic myself, because I haven't actively gamed. I haven't been an active gamer in years now. The last time I purchased a new game was in 2017 when The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild came out, and before that I had an almost 5-year break from video games entirely, almost 6 actually, now that I think about it. But I'd like to give some of my reasons as to why I don't find gaming compelling anymore, why gaming as a hobby, I still respect video games hugely as a form of art, but as far as me taking the time out to play games and spending money buying a game and playing, I'd just like to go over why that doesn't really happen anymore all that much. Now, there's a couple of really good reasons for this, really hugely impactful, important reasons, and I'd just like to go over it in no specific order, those reasons, just kind of give my 2 cents on why I don't find gaming compelling anymore. Now, before we do anything else, I do feel the need to kind of stress that when I was a kid, when I was a much younger lad, in my, early teens to childhood to early teens rather, I was a big gamer. I played new games, even if they were in a genre I didn't really care about, even if they were, games in a series I'd never played before. I was just willing to give anything almost a chance. Now, in the late 90s to early 2000s, which is what I sort of consider to be the kind of gaming renaissance. Although I do agree with David V. Stewart with his point in his recent video regarding 2007 as being the sort of high point of gaming in the history of video games. I do agree with that, but I still think as far as sort of time period goes, as far as a period where good and great games were coming out consistently, I think the sort of mid 90s to early 2000s were kind of that time period. There was a lot of new innovation at that time. Games were experimenting with interesting mechanics. You had novel concepts for gaming that, nobody in their right mind would greenlit in 2021. The idea of, the Crash Bandicoot, or take your pick out of these, insane game characters. No pun intended. Ultimately, the point is, back then, smaller studios could afford to take risks. You had people, very hugely talented people and passionate people who were actually passionate about the things that they're doing. You had those people making games that had outlandish concepts. And spending money to create this or weird kind of artistic product that may or may not succeed, that may or may not sell. That's not ultimately what mattered to those artists. What mattered is to get the game made, get your concept out there, get your vision realized. That was the thing, right? And you sort of see the same trend in Hollywood. You see the same trend in indie music. You see it in the sort of early to mid 90s pre-Evangelion anime industry. You see these weird hippie kind of nerd dudes who have these outlandish ideas, these outlandish concepts for movies and games and anime and shows that no corporate suit would ever greenlight. Primarily because they're not guaranteed to make money. They're huge risks. So whenever you hire a young guy or a young gal even to realize one of their visions as a film or a video game, you're taking it's a gamble. You're taking a huge risk. You're giving them $100,000. You're telling them to go to the poker tables and come back with $500,000. And that sort of adventurism is not encouraged in the corporate world, you know. The drive to make money, the drive to earn earn money back on your investment is too strong. And so what ends up happening is you end up creating a very safe product, obviously, that hits all the right beats, that's accessible, that's safe, that's guaranteed to make your money back, essentially. And so you see a tremendous stagnation in art because of that very reason. Like historically, corporatization in and of itself is a very recent phenomenon, but over the past 100 years, the kind of corporatization of art, the emergence of pop culture, has really meant a stagnation in creativity. In fact, it's meant almost a death of creativity, a creative drought, this desert of creativity. And that is why you see capeship movies, superhero films in Hollywood just coming year after year after year. It's the safe investment to make. Those movies make huge amounts of money. I'm pretty sure like the Avengers Endgame became like the second highest grossing picture of all time or something like that, not adjusted to inflation, obviously. But the point is, like, ultimately the same trend is very much visible in the gaming industry itself. You see these huge Unreal Engine 5 AAA, hyper realistic, photorealistic graphics, these action titles that are sit around action set pieces, and they're hugely loud and tremendously flashy, and they're just exhausting, at least from where I stand, from my point of view. Just the modern AAA title is exhausting to me to play, to look at, and I can say the same thing about Hollywood movies. Actually, it's all very flashy, it's fast, it's very loud, and it's fun. It's been fun for a number of years, but now I think I'm so over it. I'm tired. I'm existential. I'm exhausted with all of this, flashy crap, and I fucking yearn for the days of simpler titles, games that were more quiet, contemplative, games that I would describe less as being video games and more as being experiences. And that's why something like Knights of the Old Republic 2, and the Zelda games, that's why those games continue to resonate with me, even after so many years. They create this unparalleled, world. The world building is there, the music is there, the atmosphere, all of it sort of conspires to create this experience that you never want to leave. I mean, this is exactly how you create classics. This is how you create lasting memories that people look back upon fondly and revisit very gladly. And I think ultimately the creativity in gaming industries really shifted away from the major studios back to the indie scene. I mean, there's a huge, tremendous renaissance of indie gaming now that, developing indie games has become a kind of consumer or everyday layperson's reality. You no longer need a huge budget to, develop a title. You just need programming skills and maybe like Mudbox and some patience and like passionate people, right? And just by doing that, in a year or two, you can turn out like a small indie game that's going to have a huge cult following, that innovates, once again, brings innovation back into the video gaming fold. I mean, there are literally indie games now that sell for literally like millions upon millions of dollars, right? We saw this first like trend begin to emerge with Minecraft, following that with Undertale, and A Hat in Time. So many different great indie titles that took very little manpower ultimately in the grand scheme of things, and ultimately very little time, I suppose, to develop. But the return on the investment was exponential due to the sort of low production costs. Now, at this point, I realize I'm rambling. So, like, is there a point to all this? Am I like trying to get somewhere with this? So let's try and find a point. The point, I think, is twofold. Number one, my interests have largely shifted away from gaming. I have other interests now. I'm more interested in reading, writing, creating my own stories, editing video, making movies. And so I have very little time for gaming. But the second part of that equation is also that if I see a compelling enough an indie title, if I see something that really grabs my attention, yes, I'm probably going to play that. At the end of the day, it just comes down to the uniqueness and the originality of the game, the product itself. Whether the gameplay mechanic is unique enough, or if the visual style of the game is unique enough, or if the story, the premise of the game is compelling enough. Hell, I bought and played A Hat in Time just because the visual look of the game, the art direction was so damn charming. So to kind of round this whole thing off, I would implore the great big major studios to rethink their focus and their approach toward making these AAA titles. A AAA title doesn't have to cost like hundreds of millions of dollars. It doesn't have to be like a huge major Hollywood production. That's not necessary to create a compelling product that's going to sell like hotcakes. George Lucas made American Graffiti, his first major successful film, for $700,000. The budget was $700,000. It made back over $100 million. Think about that for a while.